police to get whatever it was they were giving out. So Shaheen, after about an hour of this, became impatient and said, there's got to be a better way. And so she gathered up a pile of these brochures and she marched off into the part of Marché de l'Ouest where it's a food court. And she approached every table, every table where people were eating, and she spoke to them and she handed out a brochure. And she was by far the most effective person we had that day in introducing people to the aspect of how they can help to prevent elderly people from being mistreated. I think the next time I remember, Shaheen, is when you and I walked together in a very cold weather downtown Montreal, along with the Women of Diversity Committee, that we were protesting the maltreatment of women in the labor force. Particularly, I think there'd been something tragic in a factory in Bangladesh around that time. And when Shaheen approached me at one point and said, could I be a raging granny? And I'm not really a granny, but I'd love to be one. And I said, well, sure. Would you be willing to wear one of our, an outrageous granny hat on top of your hijab? And she said, sure. And so Shaheen has joined us ever since then. And we've had many, many opportunities to walk together, protest together, sing together, sing on Zoom solely and put it all together. And so it gives me, and we've had an opportunity in the past to invite and have Shaheen join us in our congregation one Sunday when we were able to meet in the church. So it's now, since that time, since I think you met with us that time, of course, situations in Quebec have changed. We're all living through the agony and worry and stress of this pandemic, and wondering when we will be able to gather and join arms and not just voices on a screen. And Bill 21 came in as well. And so we saw you again there when we were protesting in Place Émilie Gamelin about Bill 21, which restricts people who work in certain public careers and workplaces for the Quebec government to wear anything that smacks of a religious symbol. Of course, that includes kippas, it includes turbans, it includes crucifixes, but probably the people it most affects are the women, the Muslim women who wear a hijab. And so we wanted to hear from you again, Shaheen, and it's with great pleasure that I turn the podium, or whatever you want to call it, the screen, over to you, and welcome you to our Lakeshore UU congregation once again.
An introduction, and kudos to you all for giving me this honor of being among you today to share my thoughts. And I was thinking maybe I'm going to keep it simple, because I'm not a negative person. I don't want to dwell on the negative things about the laws or the religion or something. So what I will do is I will begin my talk in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. And I shall speak to you about myself and also touch upon my beliefs, so you understand that what you see at large is not what Islam is all about. During my talk, I will be quoting some verses from the Quran. I shall leave out the chapter and the verse numbers to save time, but if you want, I can give them to you afterwards. I feel that an event like this promotes understanding between our communities, our cultures, our religions. We learn about the other being no different than us. My journey in Canada began on a night in September in 1976, when I landed at Mirabel Airport. an exciting time for me as I was going to start a new chapter of my life in a new country. I brought up my family of 4 young children in this loving and accepting country called Canada. Everything was new to me, and I was happy, and I am very, very grateful that the people around me were all helpful and full of love. They were so pleased to see a young family of 6, 4 children aged between 10 and 1 years, and 2 adults aged 28 and 35, eons ago. They went out of their way to help us integrate. September being the start of the school year, we walked into a building that looked like a school board and registered our 3 school-aged children. When the children started their school year, I was asked if I would like my children to miss the religions class. And I told them no, I would like them to learn the religion. The teachers were quite surprised at my response. There were hardly any Muslim children in that Catholic school system, as I believe most of them went to Protestant schools by default. I was the lucky one. You see, I got to learn the Bible too, as I used to help them with their homework. For me, it was not new, as I had friends back home who were Catholics, Protestants, Hindus. We were a good mix in the school that I went to, in a small town called Khulna in East Pakistan, that is now Bangladesh. That was the only English school in that town. It was even called Private English Day School. When my children here reached an age where I did not have to be with them, I started doing Avon. I was the Avon lady of the area. The children came back from school. I taught them some Quran. I gave them a snack, picked up my Avon bag, and went out into the neighborhood. I learned a lot during those Avon visits. In the early years, of course, there were hardships in our life, but God is good, and we overcame those with a smile and treated them as part of adjustment to a new life. Do not forget that I had traded a good life back home with this one because I thought that this would be good for my children. Later on, when I had more time, as the children had become adults and had their own life, I started volunteering in different community organizations. My goal in life, as Sheila very well knows, is to help others as much as I can. Sometime into all this, I started noticing that the environment was changing. Personally, I was lucky and still am, as I enjoy the love and respect. But I was hearing horror stories as my fellow citizens, whom I shared my beliefs with, were suffering all kinds of discriminations and prejudices. I'm sure you're all aware, and Sheila spoke about the existing laws today. Meantime, I joined an organization called the Canadian Council of Muslim Women, where our mission is to help women, Muslim women in particular, recognize their identities and integrate into society. And it would be interesting for you to visit our website, ccmw.com, to see all the work that we do. We have a legal department and things like that. We have different departments. So of in particular interest to you would be to watch the videos of women on that link, hatetohealing.ca. It's just one word, hatetohealing.ca, where you will hear testimonies of Muslim women, several of them, there are several videos, who have been mistreated and discriminated against. I never grew up with these prejudices. I was brought up in a very open environment. That is why I felt that in this atmosphere of hate and fear, sharing our ways and thoughts would let others understand that we are all one humanity. I mean, your hymn also predicted that we are all one humanity. We only look, dress, or worship differently, but we do worship the one and only who is common to all. Quran tells us, verily, this community of yours is one single community, since I am the sustainer of all. Remain then conscious of me. Another verse says, I created you one single community, and it is you who made the differences. Apart from the regular 5 pillars that everyone already knows, in Islam, the 2 cardinal requirements are belief in God and doing good to your fellow man. Muslims believe in a chain of inspired prophets who taught the same truths, beginning with the dawn of religious consciousness in man. It says clearly in the Quran, in matters of faith, he has ordained for you that which he had enjoined on Noah, and which we gave thee, O Muhammad, insight through revelation, as well as that which we had enjoined upon Abraham, Moses, Jesus, saying, steadfastly uphold the faith and do not break up the unity therein. For a Muslim, God is one, indivisible, eternal, invisible, beneficent, almighty, all-knowing, omnipresent, just, merciful, loving, and forgiving. There's no monasticism or priesthood in Islam. No priest, pastor, or saint can intervene or mediate between the individual worshipper and the creator. Quran explains that God sent all his messengers mainly to assert his unity. Prophet Noah said, I have been commanded to be of those who submit to God. Prophet Abraham said, I surrender to the Lord and cherisher of the universe. Prophet Joseph addressed God saying, Thou art my Lord and protector in the world and the hereafter. Make me die submissive unto thee and join me to the righteous. Prophet Moses addressed his people saying, O my people, if indeed ye believe in God, then in him put your trust, if ye submit to him. The Quran instructs us not to make any differences between any of God's prophets. God sent Prophet Muhammad with the religion complementing those of the aforesaid prophets. He did not claim to be the founder of a new religion. His mission was to restore the earlier religions. The message conveyed through Prophet Muhammad was for all of mankind, not just for a certain community. In respecting other religions, Prophet Muhammad set an example to be followed by all. And there are many, many stories from his time as recorded by his companions. And I'll just give you a short story about one of the incidences. Is that one time the Prophet was sitting with his companions, and there was a funeral procession passing by. So the Prophet stood up in respect of the procession. And his companions turned to him and said, that was a Jewish man's funeral. So the Prophet turned to his companions and said, was he not a human? So you see, it's respect for everyone. The word Islam itself is derived from the Arabic word salima, and there are several meanings. It means peace and security, obedience and surrender, release and exemption from inner and outer evils. It is assertion of the unity of God and the yielding, submission, and deliverance of conscience to the Supreme Being, a total surrender to the will of God. Defending your right of worship is allowed, as it says in the Quran, fight in the way of God against those who fight against you, but begin not hostilities. Verily, God loves not the aggressors. Also, and if they, that means the enemies, incline towards peace, you too incline towards it and trust in God. Sanction to fight is given only in self-defense or when your religious beliefs are threatened. The role of women in Islam is a subject that everyone is curious about. I call Prophet Muhammad the first feminist in the world, as he was the one who made men at that time realize that they had to fear a day. And this is the Quran I quote, fear a day when the female infant buried alive shall be asked about the sin for which she was killed. Yes, the female child was buried alive, as she was considered a shame to the father. Whenever the father was informed of the birth of a daughter, there was no shame worse than that for him. In the sight of God, men and women are equal. It is explained in the Quran as, I shall not lose sight of the labor of any of you who labors in my way, be it man or woman. Each of you is equal to the other. References to men and women in the Quran are through attributes and deeds by which they will be judged. Each of us is responsible for our own actions. And just like many cultures around the world, Arabs were a patriarchal society, and I'm sure they still are. Men regarded women as their property. Women were treated as a commodity and even marketed as one. Islam set out to liberate them of these ills and made the genders equal. There are several verses in the Quran to remind us of that. It was revolutionary in regards to inheritance by women. At that time, women in most parts of the world were not only did not inherit, they themselves were bequeathed as property at the death of a husband, father, or brother. Islam liberated them by giving them rights not enjoyed by them previously. Women are considered equal partners who are expected by God to enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. An adult Muslim woman has the full right to choose her own partner, deal with her property the way she finds suitable. No one else has the right to interfere. Of course, Muslim women have not been treated as men's equals, although the Quran tells us otherwise. Marriage is a very important institution in Islam and highly encouraged. However, those who are unable to secure the ties of marriage are advised to keep chaste until God provides them with enough means to get married. There are a few verses instructing spouses how to behave with each other too. The husband and wife are like garments for each other. At another place, their need for each other is like garments used for concealment, protection, and show. Each protects the honor and dignity, and each secures peace and well-being for the other. Divorce is allowed, although as the Quran states, it is an act most despised by God. But if the couple cannot reconcile, after 3 attempts at 3 different times, the two should amicably go their separate ways in kindness, as the Quran words it. They are not supposed to put impediments in each other's ways so that each can carry on their separate lives. There are laws to protect the rights of the woman. Historically, rulers, administrators, and mostly legal scholars imposed a system of inequality which they justified by their interpretations of the Quran and sometimes even the traditions of the Prophet. Quran treats the question of the veil within the limits of morality and decency. Both men and women have to be modest. God instructs believing men and women to lower their gaze. This does not mean that one should lower the head without looking at people, because that would be strange. God only requests one's gaze to be lowered without letting it fix continually on a sight that arouses desires. The subject of human rights in Islam, it is important too. The Quran says, "O you who believe, be ever steadfast in upholding justice. Bear witness to the truth for the sake of God, even though it be against your own selves or your parents or kinsfolk. Whether the person be rich or poor, God's claim takes precedence over either of them. Do not then follow your own desires, lest you swerve from justice. For if you distort or refuse to testify, behold, God is indeed aware of all you do. And Prophet Muhammad emphasized this point in his last sermon, which I consider the first declaration of human rights, by saying, people, beware of injustice, for injustice shall be darkness on the day of judgment. On the day of judgment, rights will be given to those whom they are due. I would like to point out that Quran emphasizes and recognizes diversity. Quran says, O mankind, we have indeed created you as a male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you may come to know one another. Unfortunately, over time, these principles have been modified to suit political agendas, thus presenting us with laws that hardly resemble the original Islamic ideals, espoused by the Quran and practiced by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I conclude with the verse which states, truly those who believe, the Jews, the Christians, the Sabians, whomsoever believes in God and the day of judgment and acts virtuously will receive their reward from their Lord. No fear or grief shall befall them. This confirms no matter which belief we follow, if we are virtuous in our deeds, we have nothing to fear. Thank you.
Shaheen, thank you. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
And I think we had 3 questions that were submitted in advance, but I invite people, if you have a question that you would like to ask Shaheen, if you can write it into the chat. If you're on the phone and you would like to have a question, please just unmute yourself and make it known that you would like to ask something, because we do have time, and you are so articulate and so well spoken. It would be wonderful to have some of these questions responded to. So you asked, one of the questions asked in advance was, why are women and men not treated equally in social affairs? And I know you talked about politics getting in the way and manipulating. What about in social affairs? Are women and men treated equally?
Well, you see, Sheila, they talk about this Sharia, and the Sharia that they talk about is different in every city, because the Sharia is man-made. The real Sharia, because the word Sharia means a path leading to water, and water is how do you say, an element that takes the shape of any vehicle you put it in, right? Any vessel, I should say, you put it in, right? So the metaphor, because the holy books are in metaphors, and you can, there's lots of ways of interpreting them. So the Sharia, the path leading to water, meaning a path to show you the right way. Okay. So what happened really was that in the, I think it was the 8th century or the 9th century, where a group of scholars got together and took the law of the land and the law from the holy books and put together something in with their perspective and called it the Book of Sharia. But there is no such Book of Sharia, no such book of laws except the Quran. For me, my book of law is the Quran, which teaches me and all the things that I have just spoken about, you know, and many more, about equality, about justice, about love, about understanding and respect, etc., etc. So the thing, coming back to that political, social justice, it's a question of justice. If anyone does not do justice, it does not mean that Islam doesn't have justice, right? It means that they are not following the law properly. So like Pakistan will have their own book of Sharia, India will have their own book of Sharia, Morocco will have their own book of Sharia. So everywhere it's different. so it all depends on you. I mean, speaking of equality, and I think there was a question about if the woman has the same vote as the man. Pakistan was the first Muslim country where the woman was the prime minister. We all know that. So there's no question of inequality as far as the vote is concerned. But there is a verse in the Quran where it says about the testimony of one man is equal to two of a woman. And that is a very controversial verse because it's always taken, like other verses, out of context. Okay? And that one of the scholars explained to me was it was in regards to some business transactions that were done at that time, where the woman was supposed to, one woman was supposed to remind the other woman of if she was making a mistake or something like that. So some of those laws need to be understood and interpreted in today's time, but nobody has the, I cannot say capability, but the desire. Nobody has the desire to take up the challenge to sit down and discuss it. So we're all suffering because of that.
Oh, thank you for that. One of the other submitted in advance questions had said, do Muslims respect other religions as equals? And a further question has come in on chat. Specifically, how does Islam regard other beliefs, including humanism, atheism, and First Nations belief in Mother Earth? I wonder if you could reflect on that a bit.
Yes, well, I think I covered all the questions that you had asked in my talk. So as I said, the laws are there, the respect is there. It depends on the individual, how you want to respect the other. Now, for atheism, I cannot be the judge to answer to that, because that way I'm denying God, right? Atheists deny God, right? So I don't know. A human respect, definitely. As a human, the atheist will be respected. But as his belief, I would not be able to respect his belief because he is denying my belief.
Oh, I see.
So, I mean, so am I clear to you?
Yeah, I can understand that perspective.
Yeah. So that's his perspective or her perspective, if he or she is an atheist. As I respect their perspective, I need to be respected for my perspective, in believing in God. So that's it.
Let's move a little bit into the Bill 21, if you...
Okay.
As you so very well said, I mean, we have the same thing with Christianity, with other Buddhism, you name it. It's one, the aim of the religion is one thing, and the pronouncements in their holy books are one thing, and then what people do with it, exactly. Especially people who want to manipulate, for purposes, their purposes will take it and manipulate it. So, many of us in our congregation have been incensed and angered and have spoken out against Bill 21, which not only is impacting Muslim women, but certainly all people of who for whom their religion affects how they look, the sort of the way they dress, if you will. And you talked about garment before.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I know that as a part of the Canadian Council of Muslim Women, there's been a lot of reaction.
Yes.
Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. But you see, Bill Law 21 is so discriminatory and you know what? It doesn't make any sense because it says we are a secular society. So define secularism to me. What is secularism? Okay. So in my humble opinion, secularism is the right to do what you think is right yourself. Like Sheila would do something else, and Margaret would do something else, and I can do something else, and that's secularism. And each will respect the other's belief. And to me, that is secularism. Now, if you want to talk about dress, what is different between Saudi Arabia imposing the veil on you than Francois Legault taking my veil off? Please tell me the difference. You know, so it's one kind of an imposition, right?
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to dress the way I want to dress. This is part of my wardrobe. Okay. So I don't know, you know, so how I would be happy to hear other people's views also about this Law 21. And I find it really, really discriminatory. And, you know, it's to the extent of dictatorship, you know.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're right. I don't see any questions.